Welcome to the AI-driven PM podcast. I'm your host, Rick Morris. In this series, we explore the transformative power of artificial intelligence in the world of project management. Join us as we delve into the latest trends, tools, and techniques that are revolutionizing how projects are planned, executed, and delivered. Whether you're a seasoned project manager or just starting out, this podcast offers valuable insights and practical tips to help you harness the power of AI for success. Get ready to take your project management skills to the next level with AI-driven PM. Hello, and welcome to another edition of AI-driven PM. I'm Rick Morris. I'm so excited to be with you here today as we continue to discuss how AI can actually impact project management. And again, we're going to follow that same format that we've been doing, where do a little bit of theory and then some hands-on with AI. If you're listening to this as a podcast, remember there is a YouTube channel. If you're seeing this on YouTube, there is a podcast. So there's multiple ways in which you can digest this, but we're so excited to be here today. On our last episode, we talked about facilitating a lessons learned or a retrospective via the team, right? We did some anonymous feedback. We did some sentiment analysis. With that, we then asked for some questions and things to assist in diving in and learning some lessons. I wanted to get a little bit more tactical in this episode as to where we can also go find sources either of delay or items or things like that that we can begin to document forward lessons learned. So this is outside just the normal team type of collaboration, but how we can use ChatGPT or Claude projects or any of the other ones that are out there to help start to compare some files, start to find some variances, find some costs for us, things of that sort, and we can begin to build out a whole new lessons learned and really start to then assemble a risk assessment. That's where we're going to be going over the next couple of episodes. But today, I just really wanted to focus on project schedules, some of the rules for project schedules, why it's really important that we have these rules and follow them, and then what the benefits are from those. And then once we have some of those benefits, how we can use ChatGPT to help mine some of that information to help us create ways to avoid those items from occurring again. So true lessons learned. So first, let's start with some of my generic rules for a project schedule. So first, my general rules for a project plan is, first of all, there cannot be any manually entered dates. Maybe one, which is the project start date. But otherwise, everything needs to be linked together and everything needs to make sure that we have predecessors and successors. There are some cases in which you might want to constrain a date for whatever reason, and there's multiple reasons. I don't want to get into debates of that portion, but as a general rule, I want to make sure that the project plans have no manually entered dates. So a project plan is ebbing and flowing exactly as it's supposed to be. That it is there's no unlinked tasks, right? We want to make sure everything's got predecessors, successors. So if something moves, no estimated durations either. That's for me, for my Microsoft project people, where it gives you the question mark. I don't want any kind of question marks, but a big one too is it needs to stay updated. So if there's a start date that's past due or a finish date that's past due, we want to make sure that we handle those. And that's the point of doing this properly in the first place, is that, you know, if a delay occurs or if something occurs, then we need to be able to find out whether or not we can recover the plan. And how we recover that plan then becomes decision points that we can then take to our sponsor and talk about the adjustments. So it's a constant evolution of a project schedule that we want to make sure that we're going through, documenting, baselining, understanding what those variances are. And there's a ton of fruit if we do that discipline in labor. First of all, it's one of the ways that I teach risk assessment. A lot of people, we like to come up with, thousands of risks or whatever you may want to do. One of the things I like to do is ask people, like, what scares you the most about this project? Like, what scares you the most? And when they answer, like, I don't know, the vendor could have a delay. It's like, really, what would happen on that vendor delay? And they'd say, well, this could happen, we could lose 20 days. So one of the things I like to do then is, once I have my plan set, we go ahead and save a copy off, and then I start running through some of these risk possibilities. So what if the vendor is late 20 days? What would happen? Where else could I possibly recover the plan or pull information from the plan or those other types of things? How could I recover if that occurs? And so If I can recover the plan, then I go ahead and in the notes of the Microsoft project schedule that I'm using at the moment, I'll detail out like what is it that I could do in order if this occurs. If I can't recover the plan, then that's a huge risk that I've got to just keep my eyes on. So those are like some quick tips as to why it's really important that you have these rules for a project plan. Quick note, if you visit my blog, pmthatworks.com, that's projectmanagementthatworks.com, pmthatworks.com, there's an old formula out there in which you can actually put in as a number formula and change graphical indicators, and it walks you through step by step. But if you have Microsoft Project, you can put that formula in, and if you do have a past due start date or a past due finish date, it'll give you a little red X in an indicator column. So it'll tell you really quickly any of your tasks that are out of compliance. So it makes it super easy. I also put in like a light bulb if a task is finishing in the next 5 business days. That's just again for me is like these are the tasks that I need to really focus in on this round of my project update. So those are just some quick tips on that piece. What I want to do now that we've kind of set that ground rule is show you a couple of results of a project schedule. So I got really old ones here. It's kind of fun, but it's a really old project schedule. What it was supposed to look like, what it kind of looked like towards the end. There was a couple of change requests, and then we're going to feed those in to ChatGPT to see what it can tell us about it and start to show you some of the power of comparing some of these documents. But first, we're going to listen to a word from our sponsor, and we'll show you all of that after the break. We'll be right back.
In today's economy, leaders are looking for a different kind of consulting partner. A partner that will work with you to understand your culture, technology, and employees. A partner that will develop the solutions you need, not the solutions they know best. For us, it's never been about simply checking a box. Since we were founded in 1999, Centric Consulting has established a reputation for solving its clients' toughest problems by delivering flexible, tailored, cost-efficient solutions, all centered on the right outcomes for each business. It's all part of our mission to deliver an unmatched experience you won't get anywhere else. Centered on what's best for you, Centric is ready to guide you on the journey ahead.
And we are back. Thank you so much to our sponsor for continuing to allow us to discuss AI-driven project management. So I've got the screen share up. We're looking at a project schedule here. Again, I know it's old. I did that on purpose. I wanted to make sure I was using some old data. Hopefully, not sharing anything that I'm not supposed to be sharing, as you should always scrub your data. But in this case, I've got an old project schedule. And this was something that was baselined. It was a project that we were going to build just a little bit of a dashboard. You can see we were going to start around December 6th. This was dated December 15th. We only had about 23 hours worth of work. It was going to be about 1,300 hours worth of work for about $173,000. So in it, we had development. We were going to do some back-end development. We were building out some data warehouse stuff. We would do a test, deploy, do a little train the trainer, and close. And as normal, as most projects go, it's nice little waterfall here. So we got some stuff here. There are some, couple of interdependencies. So we have to wait for the cubes to be done before we can start to get in and building out some of this front end development, those types of things, but a standard schedule nonetheless. Now, in this case, most of these are fixed duration, and we do have work that's associated to it. So in each one of our resources here, you can see this actual work and baseline work. So we did have 18 hours going over 3 days or 8 hours. Some of these are a little bit true, like 100%. Some of these are not. So, it depends on just how we set this up. But you can see everything was here and baseline. This was December 15th. So then how did we do? So going into now June, you can see there's a lot more breakups here because we were going in and actually tracking when we did certain work. So if you're doing timesheets in a project schedule, this helps. If you're just really staying focused, I do everything in project because it helps me with all of my reports. And so that way, I don't have to do a separate spreadsheet for Excel or for cost and a separate spreadsheet for status and all these others. I just learned how to do everything here. Um, and so you can see now we've grown to, work as 2141 here. Our actual hours, we spent about 2,000 hours. But down here, you can see we had a change request one and change request two. So there was a couple of items that come through the client. But what's nice is now I've got what we thought we were going to do in December to what we actually did in June. And again, following the same things, there was no past due start dates, no past due finish dates. We updated the percent completes. We put in actual work. So if you were to look at like the resource sheet or the resource usage, here you could see that there was work and actual work. So we would put in, for project oversight, these were like planned hours, but we would put actual hours in here when we actually did spend them. So this 10101 instead of just like this 2.41 going across. So this was accurate to a timesheet level of how we were actually running the project. So now that I have all of that data, I can actually export that into two different spreadsheets and use those for comparison. So now we're going to go to ChatGPT and we'll actually upload exports of these two files and do this prompt here and see what ChatGPT finds within this. So it'll start with, please compare the two attached files, which are dated. The first file starts with 12/15/06 and the second file starts with 06/04/07. Each file contains multiple tabs that have baseline and actual information. Can you go through both files, compare them, and tell me the biggest sources of cost or time overrun? Please think through each of the responses and provide justification as to why those are the biggest source. So I'm going to put that in. We'll let ChatGPT do its analyzing. And it's going to give us our results. So it's going to tell us that there were significant cost and time overruns. Sure. So it starts off with this unidentified task, which is actually the project overview. It says it has a total cost overrun of $85,000 in 57 days. The fact that it didn't have a task name in the spreadsheet because it was the actual overall project, it says it does represent an aggregated or undefined portion of the project, which helps out from there. So change request 2 and change request 1 were there. So it does show that. The biggest source of time overrun was this unidentified task. It says several tasks related to change requests and additional project features such as front-end rewrite and additional KPI criteria contributed to delays of 33 and 42 days. This is interesting because now we're starting to get to actual impacts and delays. So it gives us the justification of the sources, but I could just say the NAN task is the project over all task. So we can disregard this one. So now what I want to start to do is provide more context so we can get into some more granular details. I can say, what are the 5 biggest time overruns that are not a change request and do have a task name? So I'm giving it a little bit more additional context to go find some additional, what are the tasks that overran here? So it's going to do its thing, read through both schedules, but you can see that we now have these 2 files. The context of them are there. It can see both, and it's doing the comparison. So here we can say the 5 biggest overruns are project oversight, project management, project documentation. Okay, well, obviously those extended because the whole time. So I could say, please do this again and disregard any task with the word project in it, right? So again, it's saying, well, there is a significant delay, and it's right. If I look at the baseline of that, when we built those overlying tasks down at the bottom of my plan, it said project oversight, project management, project documentation. Those extended by the length of the project, so those would be the biggest source of time overruns. But if I remove those now, I'm getting into the nitty gritty. So design the cube had a 46-day overrun. building the cube had a 46-day overrun. The cubes themselves were there. Design had a 43-day, and source data. It says the overruns indicate that tasks related to the cube design and build phases, along with the source data handling, were major contributors to delays. The consistent delays in cube tasks suggest potential challenges in the technical or architectural aspects of the project. Totally cool, right? So what we've done now is taking just by me having the diligence to keep a plan updated and following those initial rules, I can now compare these two plans and start to find these true oversources. So I could say which tasks only appear in the later file. So this would be suggestion of tasks that were added during the project. So asking that question, let it do its analysis, and now it's just going to give me things that didn't have a baseline, right? So we had additional columns, additional KPI criteria, change request 1 and 2. We had a cube rewrite, front end rewrite, and then we had test 1 and test 2. So we broke testing out in this particular project. So what's interesting is I have this context of this project. I understand some of these things. And so when we start to work with ChatGPT and start to build this out, imagine now we have a database maybe internally at an organization where as part of the closing, lessons learned that we start talking about, we can start uploading some of these files, running some of these comparisons, and extracting the insights that we're getting. And then those insights then become stored as our true lessons learned. So for instance, here we could say, what are 3 observations from the insights you are seeing when comparing the files? What I love about utilizing ChatGPT in these types of scenarios, and I've said it before, it's like a brainstorming partner. I can go back and forth. This could spawn another idea. That idea can spawn another one, and off we go. So the 3 key observations it gave me was a scope creep and change requests. So the presence of significant change requests and additional tasks in the later files suggests the project scope expanded considerably after the initial baseline was set. Absolutely 100% true. This likely contributed to both cost and time overruns, and substantial rework in additions to scope were introduced mid-project. 1000%, that's exactly what happened on this project. It said cube-related tasks such as key time overrun drivers. So tasks related to the design and build of cubes were among the largest sources of time overruns in the later file. This indicates the technical and architectural challenges in these areas were either underestimated or encountered unforeseen complexity leading to major delays. So let's just take that for a moment. Imagine I'm doing this as a prelude to leading a lessons learned session, right? So so I just want some specific things. Now, instead of just saying, hey, gang, what went wrong, or what can we improve on, or I taught in the previous one, start, stop, and continue, we can get into, hey, listen, when we got to these specific things, is it that it was underestimated, or did we have some things that were unforeseen, or what can we do, or what questions could we ask in the future that could potentially prevent this? So we're taking a database solution. So we're not blaming somebody for being late. We're not blaming anything like, oh, this is over. What we're doing is we're like, here's a factual overrun, but here's the key is I know that there's a 43-day delay. So imagine that. If I had a database not only of just certain things that existed, but their impacts. I think the greatest thing that's missing from lessons learned or from risk assessments is that these risks or lessons don't necessarily tie to impacts. They don't necessarily lead to there was a 42-day overrun, or there was a cost of $50,000 that was impacted, or whatever that may be, right? In this case, this project was supposed to be like 173,000. It finished at around 225, right? That's a $50,000 overrun on a pretty large, or on a project representing about 30% of the revenue, right? Overall. So it's a pretty large overrun when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. So I now have impacts that I can associate to these lessons learned. So now instead of if I'm doing a risk assessment and it says, hey, this condition exists. I know that the last time that happened, it cost us 42 days or a $50,000 overrun. Do you see the power of what we're starting to find here as we start to dig through this? And this was just taking two plans and comparing them. Imagine if I had the meeting notes and the minutes and my change I submitted the actual change requests, and I had the scope document and the project plan and the issue log and the risk log and all the documentation we had for a project, and we put all of that in context and said, hey, let's go tie together some variances, let's go tie together some things, and start to understand what our lessons learned. So if just to kind of finish this example, I could ask them, what are three suggested questions that I could ask a new project manager who is about to start a new project that would have cubes um, in it, to help find out how to avert these risks. I don't even know if that's great English, but that's what we're going to do. So here's three. So how do you plan or estimate the complexity and resource requirements for cube design and development? What steps will you take to ensure early validation of cube structures and avoid rework during later phases of the project? Number three, how would you handle changes to the cube architecture or requirements during the project? And what controls will be in place to minimize scope creep? These are great questions. Not the best, right here, but again, I would follow that 5 whys and continue to drive in. But again, I'm just trying to get the point across here. What I'm trying to teach is, if we follow some of the tenets that we should follow in great documentation of project management, we then can compare, right, historically. So one of the things that I've done my entire career is, as I go to update my new project plan, I save it and date it so that I can just I save it off first in case there's any issues, I can revert back. But second, now I have a historical run of all of my different project schedules, so I can see those major impacts and changes. And from there, I can then start to pull out these variances and things of that sort. So that's the end of a demonstration, is what we're talking about here. I think we get the point across. Again, as I'm trying to keep these episodes super tight, and not let my ADD go crazy, it go up in multiple directions. But to tie it all together again, if we follow simple rules for our project schedule, we do great documentation, then ChatGPT could start helping us mine some nuggets out that we can then tie to impacts, which then can forecast future risks and allow us to use actual historical data to project potential variances and help us build a contingency with our executives. For example, if you do a risk assessment, right, and a lot of you have these risk assessments, and maybe you have a fancy score like 4.87, or maybe at the end of the risk assessment, it says the project is medium risk. That doesn't give you any data to take to a sponsor to say, hey, listen, I need more time or more money. Why? Well, my risk assessment's a medium. Right. It's okay. Thanks. Right. So with this, you can start to build a database of actual impacts to say, hey, listen, I really need to discuss having a contingency of 20 days. Why? Well, because we're building cubes in this project, and last time we did that, there was a 42-day overrun. Right. And so I just want to have a little bit of time out there in case that happens. Of course, if it doesn't, we'll get that time back to the project. So we'll finish earlier than we thought. But I would love to have that contingency. Is that okay? Right. I'm using that true historical information. By the way, if you've done a ton of lessons learned out there, as most organizations do, but they're sitting on SharePoint or whatever, I've got some really exciting news, but we're going to wait for a future episode to talk about it. But imagine again, if we could start pulling together all of this documentation and start building a true knowledge base that actually served our new project managers. So if you've never run a project for that organization before, you still get the benefit of 10 years of lessons learned. That's what we're starting to work on. That's where we start to see AI start to drive this through. And that's what we're super excited about. So for now, we're going to end this episode. We again, thank you for all of things that that I'm getting in feedback. I'm getting a ton of social media messages, a lot of you reaching out, certainly appreciate it. And we'll continue to try to educate and help how to become an AI-driven PM. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for tuning into the AI-driven PM podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and found valuable insights to enhance your project management journey. If you did, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Don't forget, you can also find our episodes on YouTube for more great content and visual presentations. This podcast is proudly produced by R Squared Multimedia. Until next time, keep innovating and embracing the power of AI in your projects.